Hi, my name's Martin Hinshelwood. I run Naked Agility in Scotland. I'm a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, professional Kanban trainer with Pro Kanban, and I've been a Microsoft MVP in DevOps for about 13 years. I'd like to talk a little bit about the tyranny of Taylorism and how to detect Agile BS. I'm probably gonna start with some data to show why I think there's a problem. Then in the middle, we're going to go back in time and see what the problem is. And then we're going to look at how do we maybe measure that problem? How do we figure out whether companies are lying to us, whether they be our vendors, or we want to go work for them, or we're just lying to ourselves, maybe. Okay, so maybe we can tell the difference. I'd like to thank stackconf for the opportunity to talk to you. Please feel free to post any questions in the chat. I should be there already. And if you can't find me in the chat or I don't have time to answer your question, please message me on Twitter or LinkedIn. It's up to you. Okay. I did promise you a little bit of data. This data here is from Forrester Research 2017. There's probably more up-to-date versions of this and you can go look for it yourselves. But the assertion here is that 81% of all software development shops, teams, orgs say that they are agile. And aside is of that, about 80% say that they're also say they're doing Scrum. Okay, so 80% Scrum, 80% Agile, and that last 10% is maybe doing Waterfall, right? But I would like to assert that almost 80% of them are lying, right? They're feeding us a little bit of Agile BS, and I'd like to get to the bottom of it. And let me validate that and say why I think almost 81% of them are lying. First off, only 22% of these organizations claim to be doing short iterations, right? And that's iterations of 1 month or less. Not doing short iterations, not doing Agile. That's pretty much how that rolls. 16% don't have ordered backlogs, right? If you don't have an ordered backlog, you don't have an understanding of the value and the queue of value that you're delivering. I don't see how you can be optimizing that flow of value, failing fast if you don't have an ordered backlog. Only 13% do retrospectives. This one I don't get. That's kind of fundamental to the inspect and adapt loop. You can't create an empirical process control system. You can't adapt going forward into the future unless you're doing some form of retrospectives. It doesn't have to be the Scrum retrospective that's once every 2 weeks, but it does have to be some form of review of how we're working and adapting what we're going to go do next. If you want to take a look and dive into the data yourself, you can see there MVPs, minimum viable products, about 5%, pair programming 15%, daily stand-ups only 21%. Add this all together and I believe that very few organizations, very few teams are really doing Agile, even though they say they are. And when I was putting this presentation together, I searched on the internet and I found this post from Brian Wang. I've used it a couple of times, but I think it's true. I think most organizations pretend they look awesome, and really they're not. They're just good at hiding it. Banks are a good example. Most people I know that have a bank account and use banking services think that banks are doing okay. But any of you out there, including myself, who have actually worked in a bank, will know that Brian Wang's comment holds true there. It's not good. It's not what you think it is. And this is a real struggle. Okay. So I guess the question is, why is it so hard to do something different? Right? If the existing situation and tools is not working for us, Why are we still doing it that way? Isn't that the very definition of insanity, to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result when however we don't get that different result? So a lot of this, it stems, and I don't like to use the term waterfall very often, because for me waterfall is just a symptom. It's the tip of the iceberg. Taylorism is the real problem that we are trying to combat. Taylorism is the thing that is getting in our way. And it's where this little graph here came from, where we have requirements, design, implementation, verification, and maintenance, right? Where did this idea come from in the first place? I would assert that even this is just a symptom. We have, in organizations, we often have hierarchies, and we have departments, and departments hand off work to each other. And it's exactly the same as requirements, design, implementation, verification, and maintenance. We might have a sales team, a contracts team, a legal team, and they're all kept separate, not allowed to talk to each other except through approved procedures and channels. Okay, so why do we work this way? Where did this stuff come from? Well, I'd like to do a little bit of time travel here, and we're going to go back in time 130 years. And prior to the Industrial Revolution, manufacturing took place at or near the home. In small workshops, compensation came through earned value and was based on how well a person made a product or how useful it was to the purchaser. Okay. In other words, there was purpose to people's work. Mastery enabled by the master and apprentice system, ensuring that quality was passed down through the generations. People could choose to work hard and well, or get better at what they did, and their application of the same would often manifest it as either increased wealth, right, or greater time to pursue other interests. As people spent a lot more time with their families back then, or worked hard, depending on how you look at it. Then the Industrial Revolution came along, and during the Industrial Revolution, the world changed tremendously very quickly. We need to scale up production of tools, of our work, of our output. We knew what the output was going to be, so we ended up wanting to automate a bunch of processes to make more product faster. But we didn't have robots, we didn't have the technology at the time, so we had to use people. We had to mechanize the workforce. And here we have two pictures of people making something. No idea what they're making. This picture above me could be clocks, I guess. I have no idea. I'm not sure that this person here even cares what it is they're building. I don't think it matters to them. Their job is very specifically to do something with these little circles, and they don't have to do anything else. They don't have to know anything else. They don't have to care about the customer. They don't have to care about anything. The outcomes were managed by leadership, by the organization. They are just there to provide that robot doing that particular task. And on the left, I've got no idea what they're building. That could be hubcaps. I don't know. It doesn't matter, and the people there don't care. And that's part of the problem. When you see the difference between these two worlds, what happened? Why is that such a disconnected experience on the right there? And the biggest impediment to value delivery was identified as something called soldiering. Now, this is not a term we use in this way anymore, but it means to work more slowly than one's capacity to loaf or to malinger. You will get various things if you try and look them up for your language, but it's basically this group of folks here. They are workers. They're meant to be working. They're trying to avoid work, yeah, because they don't care about the work. They just care about their paycheck. That is it. So they don't care. So how do we manage these people? How do we figure out how to get more out of them? Well, Frederick Winston Taylor came along. He was the thought leader at the time, and he came up with this statement, which I think still rings true today for many managers. Right, people managing other people, treating them as resources. They believe that hardly a competent worker can be found who does not devote a considerable amount of time to studying just how slowly they can work and still convince their employer they're going at a good pace. There's almost a default assumption of negative intent, right? Our employees are going to be lazy, they're untrustworthy, therefore we have to control them and control them more. That was the mindset at the time, and Frederick Winston Taylor came up with the scientific management method to help manage these people. And what they did was they created standard methods for performing each job, so everything's just to task and standard. We're going to divide workers into appropriate ability-based groups, right? So we're going to have the people that screw the top on the toothpaste bottle on one group, those that fill the toothpaste bottle in another group, and those that, I don't know, attach the two sides of the toothpaste bottle, I don't know how that works, in another group. They don't have to learn any other jobs, they only have to learn this one thing that they have to do, and they just have to do it faster. Okay, so that's ability-based group, and then we're going to train them in just those standard methods. They don't have to know anything else. We don't need them to think. That's a bad idea. Thinking workers is a bad idea because they're largely uneducated, don't have a lot of skills. We've got 300 people waiting at the door to take the next job that's available. So let's just plan everybody's work, and then we can treat people as resources, hire anybody to do any job, and fire anybody as soon as we don't think they're performing well, and get somebody else in. Right? That sounds like a good idea. And then if people want to make I guess a living wage, we're gonna have wage incentives. If they work harder or faster, then we're gonna increase their salary, give them like bonus or something. Following Frederick Winston Taylor came a gentleman who you won't recognize, okay? But he is Henry Gantt. You will recognize his surname. Yes, he came up with the Gantt chart. And he used scientific analysis to kind of improve things, and he created the task and bonus system, right? Based on the idea that we should pay people a basic wage based on expected low performance. You as an employee are not going to perform well, therefore we will pay you based on that low performance. And then if you meet or exceed targets we give you, then you will get your bonus and get it up to a reasonable wage. So we're going to pay you less than you deserve, or the less than you need, less than you are worth, and then your bonus brings it up to the level that you need. And then your manager, who has to motivate you, we're going to incentivize that manager based on you meeting your targets. So if you don't meet your targets, your manager doesn't make his bonus. Yeah, it's going to take money away from your manager if you do bad work, because that's a good idea. Okay, and indeed, it's kind of similar to the modern school system, right? If you think about the modern school system, reward for fulfilled tasks, everybody sits in rows, everybody has to do the same thing at the same time, no talking, and incentive-based learning. Now, these gentlemen were not responsible for the modern school system, but they definitely were interested in perpetuating it as it was an ideal world to create factory workers, to create people who had just enough knowledge to exist in society, be productive, but not question, right? Because we don't want robots questioning what's going on. That's for another 100 years, and then we'll be in deep doo-doo. Okay, so what's the difference between these two? Really, not a lot. School system kind of trains you to be factory worker. Sorry, that's the way it was designed. That's not the way it was designed, but that's the reason it was perpetrated on us, and is kept to this day. Just because it's hard to change stuff at that level, at that scale. Largely, the education system is glorified childcare, and there's no interest in changing it to be anything else. So these two gentlemen, they optimized for output, okay, not outcome, because the outcomes were known. We know exactly what it is we're going to build. We're going to build a clock. It's going to have this quality, which means these parts need to have this precision, and we'll just make it. And all of the people involved in this process are factory workers. They're automatons who we can replace widgets in a machine that we can just get rid of and replace. So this is the graduating class of Harvard in 1908. This was the leaders of all of those companies that started the sons of all of the people that owned the organizations at the time, and then they went off around the world to be managers, to lead organizations, and Taylorism spread from that point. In the 1950s, this new way of working emerged that was to become that term waterfall that we know and love. You can see above the same things that we're talking about for the factory workers. And then the largest purchaser in the world took on this system, thought it was a good idea, and that's the US military complex. They have something like 2.8 million full-time employees and a $700 billion budget. So the largest spender in the world, largest buyer. And they, because they made it part of their procurement processes, it just became part of their vendors' procurement processes, and that kind of trickled down to the rest of us, which kind of sucks. But then we started building computers, building more complex things, and things did not go so well. They did not turn out like we were expecting. So what was the problem? Well, in fact, we needed something a little bit different, okay? When we are working in the... if we know everything up front, we can work in that plan-driven world where we can decide everything. If the variance between how long we expect something to take and how long it actually takes is small enough, 10 to 15% maybe, then we can plan the whole thing out, and then we can manage for that inconsistency in the story as we go, where the variance is small. But in the software world, this was the start of the greater knowledge working world that most people, especially all of you here, and especially anybody who works in an office, is really a knowledge worker. They're not a factory worker. Yeah, they need to use their brain to solve problems every day, and suddenly the variance is not 10 to 15%, but 60 to 70% variance in what you think the outcome is going to be and what the actual outcome is going to be. Anytime you're doing product discovery or product discovery or product development, then you're going to end up in that space, and the old tools are no longer valid. So in that predictive world, we have long-term detailed plans. We can assign and control work. We can maximize capacity and effort. So we want to make sure that all of our widgets in our machine, all of our machines in our factory are utilized at their full capacity, and we can work to keep people on that schedule that we built in the Gantt chart. And then we can drive and manage it all with reports and meetings to figure out how we're going to fix problems. And it's the manager's job to go and intervene and fix the problems. We're going to appoint a manager for the project, and they're going to solve all of those problems. And if people don't work hard or fast enough, maybe we could motivate them by giving them more money or potentially a better job title, right? These are all practices that work inside of that predictive world. But once we get that really high level of variance, it starts to break down. It no longer really works in that space, and we need to do something differently. And above here is the empirical management practices that make sense when the variance is high, right? We need to manage risk differently. So instead of creating that plan, keeping everybody to it, we accept that it's, our plan is crap, right? It's 60 to 70% unknowns. So let's instead set goals, vision, and direction, and have people be smart enough, organized enough to work towards that goal, vision, and direction. We create an environment within which that works. We get things out of the way that are causing these people problems from doing the work. They're the smart people that understand the work, rather than us, the managers. They're the highly educated ones who are solving the problems and creating the things. And then we need that incremental feedback, right? We need to deliver something that's usable so that the people that are going to be using our product can use it, see what it's like, and then give us feedback, and we change and we create that feedback loop system. And the thing that really motivates people in that world is not money. Oh, I keep doing it the wrong way. Money, my arm disappears. Money and a job title. It's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We want to feel like, oh, I'm opposites. We want to feel like we're in control of our own destiny, that we choose what and when we work on. We want to feel like we're good at our job, that we're skilled, that we're respected in our profession, and we want to feel like the work that we do matters. So how do we do this? How do we know when an organization is doing well in this space? Well, in fact, there are some very large organizations that have realized that this is all a bad idea and isn't going well. The biggest of which is the perpetrator, one of the perpetrators of why we're all doing it this way, and that's the US Department of Defense. And they have released a white paper, which I love, called Detecting Agile BS. And I'll just read this small piece out for you. Agile is the buzzword of software development, and so all Department of Defense software development projects are almost by default declared to be agile. The purpose of this document is to provide guidance to all Department of Defense program executives and acquisition professionals on how to detect software projects that are really using agile development versus those that are simply waterfall or spiral development in agile clothing, right? So what are the tests that we're going to use? Now, I would quite often do this as interactive, but we're not going to be able to do that today. So what I would like you to do is I would like you all to think about these as Boolean propositions. They are either true or they're not. If your answer is maybe, then it's not true. Okay? So I've got 6 questions I'm going to ask you in the next 5 minutes. And I'd like you to think about whether your answer to this is yes, right? And a resounding yes, absolutely yes, we are doing that, okay? So I'm going to bring up each of these 6 questions, and you can answer them yourself. We'll not be able to get a poll, but I will be interested in your answers and your outcome. Are teams delivering working software to at least some subset of real users every iteration, including the first, and gathering feedback? That's our first question. Okay? Are you? That is interesting. There's some interesting words in there. First one is real users. That does not mean a test environment where your testers get a hold of it. It means production, right? Real users, not fake users, real users. Some subset of production. It doesn't have to be rolled out to everybody, but some subset of production and gathering feedback. If your answer is no, then I'm sorry, we're not doing Agile yet. Okay, this is a minimum requirement, especially for Scrum. Scrum absolutely mandates that you deliver working software at least every iteration to some subset of real users. Okay, delivery. Is there a product charter that lays out the strategic goals? Do all members of the team understand, and are they able to see how their work contributes? Right? That goes to that purpose idea. Do the people doing the work understand why they're doing the work, what they're trying to achieve, how the thing they do connects to that thing? Because if the answer is no, I'm sorry, but we're not doing Agile. Okay? Are teams empowered to change their processes based on what they learned? Right? Are your teams able to change their processes, or do they have to follow what the organization says they have to follow? Where's your balance of autonomy versus alignment? Right? Big organizations have some rules. Right? That's okay, but are they empowered to change their processes based on what they learn? If they find out that something you've told them to do in a certain way is not going to work, do they have to still do it that way? Because if they're not allowed to change it, I'm sorry, that's not Agile. These are fundamental. Is feedback from users turned into concrete work items for sprint teams on timelines shorter than 1 month? Do you have a tight feedback loop that's at least 1 month? Getting feedback from users, updating your work items, delivering different stuff. Because if not, again, I'm sorry, just not agile, right? Get 2 more. Are teams empowered to change the requirements based on user feedback? Right? Can you update and change the requirements because users tell you something about what it is you've delivered and how they're using it? Right? For that, you have to be access the users have to have access to the real software. Right? Because if not, we're not agile. And then the pièce de résistance, the very last one that I find totally kicks most of our asses and means that we're not doing very good agile, is the full ecosystem of our project agile. Agile programming teams followed by linear bureaucratic deployment is a failure, right? Are you, as the engineering team, in full control of your ecosystem? There are no audit or compliance requirements from external to your company that don't allow you to be in control of that space, that don't allow you to control what happens in production, right? They might restrict access to it, but you should be in control of that. Because if not, it's very difficult to claim agility, right? So for all of your teams working in your organization, the answer should be a resounding yes. These 6 questions are the high-level questions from that Detecting Agile BS article from the Department of Defense. I think they're a pretty good litmus test. These are the leadership questions. They also have engineering questions in that white paper, so it's well worth a read. I email it to most of my customers, first communication I have with them, hoping that they'll have a little read and maybe have a little bit of realization dawn. Are we actually agile, or are we lying to ourselves? Is our journey longer than we think it is? That's okay. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to be here, right, in order to be successful. But it's going to be difficult to claim that you're agile if these things are not true. Because ultimately, even if you use waterfall type measurements, traditional project management methods, using agile practices, projects are about 30% more successful, with 32% of small projects being more likely to succeed than 600% of large projects. But the average is about 30. Right? 30% is a lot of money. Right? That's a lot of loss. And don't get bought into using somebody else's process. Neither of these 2 stories here are Agile. Safe is most definitely not Agile. And the Spotify framework was a white paper that demonstrated Spotify's position at the time of the paper. They are not doing the same thing now. Neither of these things are Agile. I'm going to leave you with this US Air Force memo. Has one of my favorite statements in it. Highly discouraged from using rigid prescriptive frameworks such as Safe. And my favorite comment down the bottom, Safe isn't used by any successful commercial software organizations. Think about that next time your organization is talking about Safe. And ultimately, DevOps and Agile, they're not magic. They're a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things, and it will take you a long time to get there. All we need to be is on that journey, right? Making progress 1 step at a time. Figure out what the next most important thing you can do in your organization to take that next step. Just take 1 more step, right? Keep moving forward. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, please message me in one of the options. I am looking forward to hearing from you. Okay? Thank you very much.